Thank you, Susan, for that introduction. I feel like I don't have to say much now. That was really terrific. Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to also thank Susan Lerner, where is she? There she is. I don't know if people appreciate this, but she has done so much, not only for the community and for the issues that Common Cause cares about, that every citizen in New York and the country should care about, but also has been an educator of mine in my office. I have met over the last couple of years with folks from various groups, including with Susan, who educated me and educated my staff about how government in New York works and doesn't work. And she was one of the hosts of mine when I went and spoke in Albany not too long ago. I want to thank you for a great evening. I feel some amount of relief this evening speaking to this group. You know, I'm the U.S. Attorney, and I'm supposedly on call all the time, and I'm always on duty, and I speak often to business groups and to hedge fund groups and all manner of folks who are involved in various professions. And so I want to report to all of you that I feel some amount of relief coming and speaking to a good government group, and for people who support good government groups, that I have not had to serve a single subpoena all evening. So I don't get time and a half tonight. I want to congratulate the winners of awards. You can give them a round of applause again. Sarah Stranahan, kudos to you, congratulations. Mort Zuckerman also. It was interesting to hear about all the awards you've gotten around the world. Unlike you, I am not welcome in large parts of the world. I've been banned from Russia by Putin. For a while, I wasn't welcome in the country of my birth, India. I'm not so popular in Switzerland, France, Jamaica. I'll sort of stop. I'll stop there. I'm going to get to Turkey in a moment, gentlemen. But I want to congratulate all of you and Common Cause on using your voice to make a difference for more than 45 years. I think this group knows better than any other that corruption and dishonest government hurt everyone. Whether you care or not, whether you are engaged or not, whether you vote or not. That's the nature of our social contract in America. And I know how dedicated and devoted to honest and clean government everyone here is. And so I know that anything I say here about the fight against corruption is the most quintessential example of preaching to the choir. So I won't preach for too long. This will be a short sermon. What is the point of anti-corruption work? Why is it important? It's important because it goes to the heart of protecting our democracy. The point is to help to achieve the dream of honest and transparent government. So the dedicated public servants in my office who work so hard every day for much less money than they could make elsewhere, they're doing it for a reason. They want to make their community and their country a little bit better. The point is not just to punish a politician who has broken the law, although that is necessary, but to help improve a political system that has broken down. Ultimately, we all want the same thing: government that works, government that makes the lives of our citizens better in a just and fair way. Now, that's a rather idealistic notion. The notion of government working well to improve people's lives while also leaving them alone. Idealism may, for a lot of people and in certain times like these, seem like a luxury concept. But idealism, to my mind, pragmatic idealism, is for us in my office, as I know it is for all of you, a state of mind, and it's a way of life. That's just how it is. That's how we get through the day. By the way, the dream of honest government, where no one is above the law and the oath of office matters, is the dream of civilized people everywhere. It is the hope not just of New Yorkers, but all Americans, and it is the hope not just of Americans, but people the world over on every continent, from Iceland to India, from Brazil to Turkey. So let me talk for a moment about Turkey. I think there are several members of the Turkish press who are here. The reason that Turkey has become relevant in my job as U.S. Attorney and why it was mentioned earlier was a few weeks ago, as Susan mentioned, The FBI arrested a gentleman by the name of Reza Zareb on sanctions violation charges and money laundering charges, and it turns out that he's a figure of some interest in Turkey. On the day that we brought the charge, I think I had 8,100 Twitter followers. Within days, I had 270,000, and as of the time of this dinner, I had 298,000 Twitter followers, I believe, virtually all of them from Turkey. Because there's a feeling, as I understand it, that there's a problem of corruption in Turkey that is not being addressed. I make no comment on that, but that's what the perception is, and that's why hundreds of thousands of people in a country that I've never been to and who have never heard of me and can barely pronounce my name and don't speak English and tweet in Turkish are looking for hope relating to clean government in another country. And I mention it also because it is just a reminder to all of us that outpouring shows how universal it is, the craving for honest government and the rule of law. And another point I want to make, we complain a lot about government in New York, and I do a lot of that complaining, and we do a lot of that arresting. But you should, and it made me think for a moment when all this happened in Turkey and the outpouring there. As bad as things are, we should sometimes be grateful that we live in the United States of America, because there are still many places in the world where I would be in serious personal jeopardy, literally just to be standing here at a podium in public and talking about the prosecution of public officials, just to be talking about applying the rule of law to the most powerful people in government. Mort Zuckerman, by the way, could be in prison in a different country because there are many places in the world still where journalists would be in jeopardy simply for reporting about what I am talking about with respect to public corruption in government. And so for my Turkish friends who are here and who mobbed me when I was outside, I've never been to Turkey in my life, either as a tourist or as an instigator of an uprising or protest, as has been suggested in some of the press in Turkey, which may or may not be free, but I would like to visit Turkey sometime. I would love it. So how are we doing in New York? It seems like a good time to take stock briefly about the past and the present. So New York, as everyone here knows, has quite a history and a relationship with corruption and dishonest government. There is, of course, the memory of Tammany Hall and so many sad tales of graft and corruption that people have read about in school and still read about today. Then on the other side of the coin, there is the story of Teddy Roosevelt, who fought back against corruption. So we have not just the putrid history of Tammany Hall, but also the proud legacy of Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt, I like to remind people, was 23 years old when he became the youngest New York State Assemblyman in history, and we need more of that kind of leadership probably than we get. He had seen enough of state government in the legislative branch to be able to comment later in life, quote, "When they call the roll in the Senate, the senators do not know whether to answer present or not guilty." He didn't know how funny that would be in 2016. Our recent history is also mixed in a similar way. There is still the fresh memory of politician after politician after politician being hauled away in handcuffs, convicted, and sentenced to prison. Some of them were mentioned before, but I'll go through the list again because it's an impressive one. Malcolm Smith, Eric Stevenson, Nelson Castro, Carl Kruger, Pedro Espada, Tom Libis, Vincent Leibel, Ephraim Gonzalez, Hiram Montserrat, Larry Seabrook, Daniel Halloran, just to name a few from my office alone, just in the last 6 years. And of course, Sheldon Silver and Dean Skelos, who will be sentenced very shortly. So that's all the bad stuff. But there is also the story of the career men and women in my office with the FBI and other agencies and other offices fighting as hard and smart as they possibly can against corruption as at any time in recent memory. And to be clear, and they're not here for me to say this so they can hear me, they deserve all the credit. I get invited to give speeches from time to time with a very nice dessert, thank you. But they do the work, they find the facts, they connect the dots, they follow the money. They are the ones who are cleaning up our government, not me. And the contributions made by groups like this, Common Cause, which had been talked about this evening, cannot be overstated. So it takes all of these folks over time, notwithstanding how bad the corruption was in Tammany Hall days and even today, to give you a full sense of the picture of how things are. So what of the future? Well, from us, from our office, you should expect more of the same. Once upon a time, a little over a year ago, I was asked the question, what's next? And I said simply, stay tuned, which took on a little bit of a life of its own. And people since then keep asking me, Preet, should we still stay tuned? What's the level of tuning we should be at? and I say, just kind of cute and silly, I said, you should always stay tuned because we're doing what we always do. You should stay tuned for the kind of work that we're continuing to do and plan to do still in our public corruption unit. There was a movie that came out some time ago, which I will paraphrase from. The part of the business of our public corruption unit is to put crooked officials in prison. And I can advise you all that right now, business is a booming. And we will keep looking hard at corruption in our legislative branch as we have been, but not just there, in the executive branch too, both in city and state government. Executive offices in government are far from immune from a creeping, show-me-the-money culture that has been pervading New York for some time now. Now, to echo a point that has been made a couple of times already and that I've made before, at the end of the day, no one, including an office that's as good and has as good a track record as the career professionals in my office have, you're not going to prosecute your way to honest government. Putting crooked politicians in prison may be necessary, but it will never be sufficient. It takes prosecutors, it takes groups like this, it takes the press to talk about these things, but also it takes leadership from the politicians themselves. So when I get asked the question and I say stay tuned, that's one thing. But every once in a while, it would be nice, I think, to hear our elected leaders say, stay tuned, and for that to mean something. It would be nice to hear them say, stay tuned for reform, stay tuned for change, stay tuned for greater transparency and greater accountability. Stay tuned as we finally begin to police ourselves. Stay tuned as we finally hold the executive branch accountable. Stay tuned for a time when a public pension is no longer a financial backstop for a convicted politician. Stay tuned for a time when we are a source of pride rather than an object of scorn. Now, I hate to say it, and I'm staying tuned. I've checked the local listings, and sadly, I don't see any of this programming on the immediate horizon. And this has been mentioned already. Instead, what we have gotten is a lot of reruns, and dare I say it, premature cancellations. Yes, that's a reference to the Moreland Commission, which didn't run for even one full season. We've gotten a lot of rhetoric, but not a lot of results. We've gotten a lot of overpromising and a lot of under-delivering. And I think, and I know everyone here thinks, that the ordinary people of New York are entitled to more, that they deserve more. So notwithstanding all that, the final question I have is, so what should be our posture? What should be our outlook for the future going forward? Notwithstanding what I just said about the lack of action on the part of some folks who can help improve the problem, our elected leaders, I still submit there is reason for optimism because of the work that the folks in my office have been doing, the work that folks in this room and those who couldn't be here are doing, because change takes time. Change takes sustained effort, and we need to keep it up. And it was said best by the first award recipient, which I wrote down on my little speech, Susan, who said, make big plans and never quit. And that's what I think we are about and why we should be optimistic going forward, even though we are not reaching the results that we hope for and want for honest and good government in New York. So we are going to keep it up in our office, and I know that you will too, because at the end of the day, we have a choice. We can imagine ourselves as poor Sisyphus pushing that rock up that hill, only for it to roll back down again, fatigued and dispirited and endlessly heartbroken when that boulder falls back down the hill. Or we can look to another Greek for inspiration, one that I like to look to, not a figure from mythology, but from history, the mathematician Archimedes. And we can imagine ourselves, as Archimedes did, hopeful and ambitious, extremely ambitious in our hope. Because he said, "Give me a long enough lever and a place to stand, and I shall move the earth itself." And I would rather think that way, and I know you would too. So congratulations on all your work. Thanks for having me. Have a good night.